This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw in New York, Roger Mudd in Washington, and commentary by John Chancellor.
Good evening. With the guns still firing in Beirut, with yet another ceasefire broken, a grim-faced President Reagan had a tough talk today with Israeli Foreign Minister Yitzhak Shamir. The president reportedly told him he wants a complete end to the fighting. Shamir did not back down, but blamed the Palestinians. Here's Bernard Kalb.
The president served notice he would be firm in his meeting with Foreign Minister Shamir. The president was. At least he struck his visitors as adopting the firmest tone yet in any talks with the Israelis. Almost none of the usual banter during the photo opportunity. And what Mr. Reagan told the Israelis was reflected in a White House statement. The president stressed the need for a complete end by all parties to the hostilities in and around Beirut, to allow Ambassador Habib to carry out his negotiations. The world can no longer accept a situation of constantly escalating violence. But sources said the president made no threats against Israel. Shamir emerged to tell reporters Israel prefers a ceasefire, but the PLO has been exploiting it.
The PLO will not leave Beirut and Lebanon unless they will be convinced that they have only one choice before them: to leave by negotiations or by other means.
Shamir then had a longer meeting with the new Secretary of State, George Shultz, who during his confirmation hearings had expressed regret over the Israeli invasion of Lebanon. Later, Shamir was asked whether he thought the administration was trying to put some distance between the U.S. and Israel.
Of course, there are some different assessments, but the friendliness prevails.
Friendliness or not, the U.S. message to Israel was that the constant breakdowns of the ceasefire are jeopardizing the negotiations in Beirut. Bernard Kalb, NBC News, the State Department.
The foreign minister also met this afternoon with Defense Secretary Weinberger, and the first thing he did when he returned to his hotel for an interview was to telephone Prime Minister Begin in Jerusalem. Shamir said his meeting with President Reagan was friendly enough.
We are not happy about causing casualties to civilian people, but we must handle it. And therefore it is our view too that the removal of the PLO from Beirut and Lebanon must be settled as quickly as possible.
Did the president, Mr. Minister, say that unless Israel lowered the level of violence or ceased to bomb the city, that he might pull Philip Habib back to Washington? No,
not at all, not at all. The president is attaching a great importance to the mission of Philip Habib.
Did he indicate, Mr. Minister, that if you did not lower the level of violence, that he might have to start negotiating with the PLO?
Not at all. Not at all. There were not any threats in his words.
Are you afraid the PLO is trying to trick you?
Of course, we are not sure until this moment that the PLO have decided to leave Beirut and Lebanon.
You don't believe them?
We don't believe them. We are not sure about it because they have many reasons for it, you know.
Would it be a sign of good faith on the part of the Israeli government to pull back from Beirut, say, 5 miles, 10 miles?
Never, because they will withdraw from Beirut, they will never leave Beirut.
Shamir would not acknowledge that Israel is having a credibility problem in the United States, but he also said that if there was one, it was not justified, because he said Israel tells only the truth. Tom?
Soviet President Brezhnev sent President Reagan a sharply worded message on the Israeli action today. Brezhnev told Reagan the tragedy of Lebanon would be a stain on the conscience of those who could stop the aggressor, but would not. President Reagan responded with a written statement issued while he flew to Iowa. He called the Brezhnev note a propagandistic exercise. We'll be back in a moment with more on the war in Lebanon, including a commentary from John Chancellor, who was in Beirut yesterday during Israel's massive attack.